Adding a script file is almost the same as adding a style sheet. However, unlike style sheets, we can load script files in the footer. If we take a look at our template, we have 2 files being loaded in the header and a few other scripts being loaded into the footer. Just like adding files inside the head tag, we also have to call a function from the footer to instruct WordPress where to load the files in the footer. At the very bottom of our template, right before the closing body tag, call the WP Footer function. This function allows our theme and other plugins to load their files into the footer. Alright, now that we have that set up, let's go to our onQueue function and start adding our scripts. Just like style sheets, we have to register our scripts. In the resources section of this lecture, I provide a link to the WP Register Script function. Let's take a look at what WordPress has to say about this function. As you can see, only the first 2 parameters are required, and they're basically similar to the WP Register Style function. In the index template, we include a script called FastClick. Let's add this script to our head through our onQueue function. So let's call the WP Register Script function and pass in a handle name. The handle name will be ju_fastclick. The second parameter is the source. Just like last time, we'll be using the WP template directory URI function. Lastly, just append the actual path relative to the themes directory, which is assets, vendor, fastclick, fastclick.js. The next step is to onQueue the script. The function that allows us to do this is the WP onQueue script function. All it needs is the handle name we registered in our script earlier. So let's call it and pass it the handle name. If we did everything right, we should be able to refresh our page and see it loaded onto the page without any errors. Great. Let's also register Modernizer and onQueue it. Make sure to remove these tags from the head tag as well. Now, in most cases, you always want to load your scripts in the footer to allow our content to be loaded before our scripts. So, how do we make our scripts load in the footer? Let's go back to the WordPress codex and take a look at the WP Register Script function again. You'll notice that the 5th parameter determines whether or not a script is loaded in the footer. By default, it doesn't. We have to pass in a true Boolean value so that we can load scripts in the footer. So let's take a look at our index template and let's load the Bootstrap file first. Bootstraps depends on jQuery, but we won't be registering jQuery, and I'll explain in a moment why. In our onQueue function, let's call the WP Register script. Like before, pass it in a handle name of ju_bootstrap. Don't worry about this conflicting with the style handle name. Style and script handle names are kept separate, so there won't be any conflicting issues. Let's pass in the source, assets, scripts, bootstrap.min.js. The third parameter is this script's dependencies. In some cases, your script will depend on the functionality of another script. You have to pass in an array of handle names for WordPress to make sure those scripts are loaded first before this one. In our case, we don't have to worry about dependencies, so we'll just pass in an empty array. The fourth parameter is the version of the script. If you update your script frequently, this can be a useful parameter to set. This is because a lot of WordPress sites have cache enabled. By updating the version, you'll force WordPress to load the latest version of this script. I'm going to set this to false, as I don't really need to worry about versioning for this script. The whole point of this part of the lecture is to load the script in the footer, which is the 5th and final parameter. All you have to do is pass in true. That's it. Let's onQueue Bootstrap and see if it loads on our page. WordPress also loads its top nav bar for users who are logged in. After confirming that it loads, why don't you pause the video and load the rest of our scripts? Alright, so I basically just registered and onQueued the rest of our scripts. You'll notice that I also removed their inclusions from the footer. If I refresh our page, you'll see that everything is loaded correctly except for one thing, jQuery. We also get a couple of errors in our console saying that jQuery isn't loaded or defined. In our onQueue file, I didn't bother registering or even onQueuing it, but why? Let's go to the WordPress codex and take a look at the WP Register script function. In the contents sidebar, I want you to click number 6, handles and their script paths registered by WordPress. You'll be taken to a part of the page that tells you that WordPress already registers jQuery. WordPress actually registers a large number of scripts. A lot of them are commonly used by WordPress developers, libraries like jQuery UI and underscore. If we scroll down long enough, you'll find jQuery. So all we have to do is unqueue this script before unqueuing anything else. Let's do this now. Refresh your page, and if you did everything right, then you should see any errors related to the jQuery are gone. Now, before I end this lecture, I want to say one very important thing. Never ever override WordPress's default scripts, including jQuery. There are some developers out there that like to include their own version of jQuery, which may seem great and all, but it's not really a good idea. You aren't the only developer using jQuery. If developers constantly use their own versions of scripts, this could break a client's site and cause hours of debugging. It's so much better to just use a jQuery version that's consistent throughout the site. So please don't try and override WordPress's jQuery.